Welcome back to the UFC Pros Pick Show. I am James Lynch. He is Nick Kalikas. And of course, we got the man of the show, James Krause, joining us. We're going to be previewing UFC London, which goes down at the O2 Arena in London on Saturday. Looking forward to this one. A bit of an earlier card because of the time change and everything, but really excited to talk about that. But before we get into that, got to take care of business. Bet DSI, use the promo code UFC, you get the match deposit bonus, and you get the signed photo of James Krause. No one's doing that, so take advantage of the offer best you can. Recapping last week, Krause, man, you did awesome as usual. I don't know what week we're in now. I think it's week 4 or something, consecutive weeks of your bets cashing. Last week, you had Miranda Maverick and Sadiq Youssef. I believe that was your parlay. That cashed. Yeah, just a good week overall. And then my bet of the week cashed too with David Basha. Yeah, go ahead.
Hold on. I said it wouldn't lose a round.
Oh, Maverick, yeah.
I said neither one of those people would lose a round.
That's true. I give you credit. Although, got to point this out, though. Going against the grain here, man. Going against the grain a bit. So, you know, you can't give me too much flack because I went against the grain. If you're picking the favorite, I mean, you're supposed to pick the person who's winning. I'm the one who's going against the grain. Yeah.
I will say this: Caceres fought Sadiq a lot better than I thought he was going to. I'm actually pretty impressed with him, man. He is getting better still, and he's filled into the weight class. Caceres impressed me quite a bit, even in that loss. I was very surprised how well he fought Sadiq. I thought Sadiq was going to blow through him.
And that's what I got to mention to people. Like, we talk about this all the time. Value is important when it comes to betting fights. Like, people want to talk smack on underdog picks. Like, come on, people. Like, that's the whole point. If we want to pick favorites, no point in even watching the show. Just look at the odds and just skip us. You know what I mean? So that's kind of why we like giving different angles on different fights. But enough about that. Let's talk about UFC London. Really awesome main event here. We've got Tom Aspinall taking on Alexander Volkov. Tom Aspinall right now the favorite at -132. The comeback in Alexander Volkov +110. Nick, let's start first with the line movement. I've seen the odds go back and forth a bit. What are you seeing odds wise?
Yeah, I mean, Volkov opened as a slight favorite, as you would expect, -140-ish or so market wide. It fell to around a pick 'em. And now you're seeing Aspinall as a slight favorite as we get closer to fight time as well. So more action coming in publicly on the Aspinall side. So a lot of support. I mean, it's a big test. This is great matchmaking because I do believe that this is the right step. If Aspinall can get past Volkov, then he's on track to get that title shot for sure, because Volkov is one of the best heavyweights in the world. Now, his last couple fights, I think, have been a bit disappointing, despite the results. Like, he's coming off a win over Tabura. And again, I guess Gane, I understand. Gane just fought for the title, but still, I don't think he's looked at his best. And Aspinall's kind of on the rise. So this is, like I said, a tough kind of spot right now. I can understand why the action's coming in Aspinall, but he is receiving the majority of the action as we get closer to fight day.
Krause, which way are you going in this main event? Who you liking here, Aspinall, or are you liking the veteran Volkov?
Well, there's two things that I want to talk about here. One is just the fight in itself. Okay. The one is the fight in itself, and that is Volkov. We talk about. I've mentioned this on the show before about fighters that I really like to bet on. Volkov has been on that list for me. He's very consistent. He's long, very difficult to take down. Always comes in shape. He's got all the things that I love, durable, all the things that I love to bet on. However, I've been too close for comfort in the last few fights. So I don't think he's looked great. And it's not like it's not a technique thing. It's I think the rounds could be catching up with him thing. And my problem on the other side of this is Aspinall hasn't really been tested. You know what I mean? Like not because Volkov is a different animal. Like he's an elite in the division. You know what I mean? So they've been doing this lately to where we get a deal to where it's like the young guy that hasn't quite been tested. And we've seen this with Dawkins and Derek Lewis, right? Like the veteran, that is he going away? I don't know what this guy's doing to the guy that's rising up. But is it too early, too soon, too early for this? I don't know. I will be honest though. I don't like what I've seen from Volkov lately at all. I think the rounds are catching up with him. And this is coming from a guy, I'm a huge Volkov fan. And I'm not even huge on Aspinall. I think he's really good. Gun to my head, though, I have to go Aspinall. Second part of this, and I know where you guys are at because we kind of talked about it a little bit off air, but to me, from a betting standpoint, this is a perfect fight if you can get over-unders and parlay those with winners. I think this is a phenomenal fight to do this. In my opinion, you would go Aspinall in the under or Volkov in the over, and you should be at plus money, big plus money, decent plus money on both of those. And I think it's going to be really difficult. You can it's almost like middling the two where it's hard to lose, you know? And I think that you can get some really good value if you do that.
Yeah, and just to clarify something, because I did notice someone mention this in the comments last week about, oh, this doesn't work. It does work if you're doing the right amount of units. That's something we don't talk about. So you can bet a certain amount of units. If you can figure out the math, like you don't have to bet the same units on that and then it'll work out. You might have to bet more on one and then the other, but it can still, if you do the math properly, it does work. And just want to clarify that because I saw some people saying, oh, that doesn't work. Yes, it does. You just have to do the math properly. Yeah, exactly. And this is it's coming from one of the best minds in MMA right now. Nick, do you have a lean in the main event as far as this fight, as far as Volkov and Aspinall?
I lean a little bit more towards Aspinall as well right now. I know it sounds crazy, but again, I think you guys are right. It's tough to kind of make a bet, especially laying the chalk right now on Aspinall as it rises, -120, -130. It's kind of difficult to get on him right now. If you got on him at even money or plus money, I understand it. But again, if you kind of miss the boat right now, I would probably stay away because I do think it comes down to the first couple rounds. I mean, if Aspinall can get him out of there early, he's going to win the fight. But Volkov is pretty durable overall. So I think if he doesn't get him out of there early, Aspinall probably loses the fight. So it all comes down to the conditioning factor, the durability factor. And I think right now, all signs point that that's Volkov. So it's kind of conflicting back and forth, in my opinion. So I'm kind of going to stay away from it personally, but I'm excited to watch this fight.
Yeah, so you said this best. Like you guys both said if this goes under, it's going to be Aspinall. I don't think Aspinall is going to finish him. I don't. But then when you tell me that, you're 100% correct. It's like, well, man, can Aspinall? It's very conflicting, like you said. Like I don't know if Aspinall. I don't think Aspinall is going to get Volkov out of there. I really don't. I mean, look at who Volkov has fought. I mean, he's fought Walt Harris, Alistair Overeem. He's beat both those guys. Both those guys are huge punchers, way bigger punchers than Aspinall. Is Aspinall going to sub him? I don't. He's hard to take down. I don't see Aspinall getting him out of there. So if you tell me Aspinall's not going to get him out of there, you tell me he's going to win a decision. And then when I think about that, it's like, gosh, dang, can he win a decision? I don't know. It's a very conflicting fight, very tough fight to pick.
We're going to learn a lot from both fighters in this fight. This reminds me a lot of Chris Daukaus and Derek Lewis, not in the style matchup, but in the sense that you have this up-and-comer who hasn't fought the level of opposition that his opponent has, and it's really going to be a proving ground. For Daukaus, he got finished in that fight. Obviously, he's not ready yet. We'll talk about that fight next week. He's fighting Curtis Blades, but this week it's Aspinall and Volkov. That's where things get a little interesting for me because, like, that's just it. Volkov has been finished in the UFC, but it was literally at the last second. Like if you want an example of a Hail Mary in football and MMA, that was Derek Lewis and Alexander Volkov. Because if you remember, Volkov was going to win a decision in that fight. He was winning all the rounds, and then Lewis out of nowhere just knocks him out. Yeah, absolutely taking it to him.
He's a better fighter. So, I don't think that's up for discussion, 100%. Right? Volkov is the better fighter.
Now, I agree with Krause in the sense that I was not impressed at all with Volkov in that Tybura fight, and you very well might be on the track of this guy might be declining. But I just think the durability factor is going to be interesting because if Aspinall, which typically he does, he puts his fighters away. I think he's only been in the second round, at least in the UFC, made it that far. It's typically first round finishes. You're not going to do that to Volkov. Maybe this is the fight where he does it, but for me, it's like if he can't put away Volkov early, I think it gets very interesting in rounds 3, 4, 5, and that's where Volkov has that experience. Not to mention the fact, you talk about him not looking great. That loss against Cyril Gane, Cyril couldn't even finish him. And I mean, and I know Cyril had won a lot of decisions prior to that, but still, you look at him going out there and finishing Derek Lewis. Like the fact that he wasn't able to finish Volkov, I think speaks volumes to Volkov's durability and just he's a tall, rangy guy for the weight class. Like he's huge. So will Aspinall be able to get in on the inside? I don't know. I'm looking at the data here. Like I got to go Volkov. And again, you're getting him at plus money right now. I think there's some value there in the sense that, he's fought better opposition. Now you could look at this the other way where it's like, okay, Volkov's wins are against guys that aren't in the UFC right now for the most part. Overeem, Greg Hardy. There's a few other names that aren't exactly popping out, but you can't ignore the losses he's had either, like to Blades and Gane. And I mean, even Tybura is a pretty good fighter. And by the way, it sounds like he might be the backup for this fight in case something happens. I don't know if you guys know that, but for now we are talking about Volkov and Aspinall, but I'm going Volkov here. Again, if I got to be the bad guy again here going against the grain, I'm fine with that. But I just think for me, I just don't see Tom Aspinall finishing Volkov early. And I would favor Volkov if the fight goes longer. That's where I'm coming from.
Do you not think that Aspinall can win a decision? Neither one of you guys do?
I don't. Really? I think Volkov actually finishes Aspinall if it gets in around 3, 4, or 5. I think there's a possibility that he finishes because of the condition.
Has Aspinall, is he I've never known him to gas out or I don't know.
We haven't seen him. That's the problem. We don't know 3, 4, and 5. And it's something different when you've just been used to finishing fights early. Again, we're going to learn so much about Tom Aspinall in this fight, I think. Or maybe we won't. Maybe he goes up there and does finish Volkov. I don't know.
I see a young athletic kid that's very poised in there, very collected. I did when I watched
He's got
him
the
fight,
weight of the world on his shoulders. This is in London, right? And he's talked to about, having to really be mentally, like he's had some issues, I know, with anxiety and stuff. Not going to go that route, but you do wonder, like, there's a lot of pressure on him to win. He's supposed to win this fight. Volkov isn't, right? In terms of what people think. So there's a lot of factors at play, but yeah, it's a razor close fight. Like, I mean, again, if we're talking about a Tom Aspinall, knockout win on Monday or next week when we do the show, it's not going to surprise me here. Like, look, I'm aware of how good Tom Aspinall is. I picked him in every fight. I just think when you look at the level of opposition and you look at the durability of Volkov, that's where I side with him. So we'll see how this one goes on Saturday. Let's get to the co-main event here. Another really interesting fight here. We've got Arnold Allen taking on Dan Hooker. And right now on the book, it's Bet DSI, Arnold Allen's now the favorite at -125. The comeback on Dan Hooker +104. I'll explain why I think that might be the case, because now the line's kind of flipped a bit. But Nick, just first line movement on this. It's been pretty even, I think, leading up to the fight.
Well, interesting, because Allen actually opened the favorite and a flood of money came in on Hooker, which is not surprising, right? I mean, Hooker moving back down to 145, what he's been able to do recently in his UFC career has been phenomenal. The guy has gotten so much better since his UFC debut a few years back. I mean, if you look at that version of Dan Hooker, you look at what we have today, holy cow, he's put the work in. He's gotten so much better. The guy's phenomenal, right? So a lot of people were thinking that if he drops back down to 145, he's a future title contender for sure because of what he's accomplished thus far. But on the other side of it, man, Allen is tough. He's very durable again. He's got a well-rounded skill set in his own right. I think he's underrated in the striking aspect of things, and he can give Hooker a lot of problems here. So right now, the action is shifted back towards Allen. It was down to a pick 'em, -110 either way, and we did get some sharp action on the Arnold Allen side. So we are respecting that at the sportsbooks, and that's why you're seeing Allen as a slight favorite right now.
Krause, which way are you going on this one, Allen or Hooker?
For me, I can't stay far enough away from this fight. There's too many X factors for me. When I look on the Arnold Allen side, he's got one. I don't want to say one good win. That's not what I mean. But like Sadiq Youssef would be the only comparable that's on the level of Dan Hooker. And then Dan Hooker has lost 3 out of his last 4. But if you look at you're like, good Lord, like that's
best in the world. Yeah,
correct. But his wins are against not guys as good as Arnold Allen. The big thing for me is the drop to 145. Like people are suggesting, like what Nick just says, like, oh, he's gotten a lot better now. So world champ if he goes back down. I'm kind of suggesting he got a lot better because he went up, and I don't know. He's a big guy, man. He is a big guy at 55. He's not small, man. He's thin, but he's 6 foot tall. I mean, like there's a lot of mass there. He's very similar to how I was. And there's just no way I could ever make 45. And I don't know. I just don't know if I don't know if his durability, I got to think that might affect his gas tank a little bit. Arnold Allen's not going away. To me, this is a true pick 'em fight. To me, it's whoever's the plus money is who. If you're saying, hey, you got to bet on this fight, whoever's plus money is where I would go on this. And that sounds like we're on the Hooker side with that. I think I favor Hooker on the danger factor. But it'll probably go over the 2. It's too tough for me. There's too many X factors in this one. Gun to my head, I got to go whoever's plus money at the time.
Which, yeah, right now is Dan Hooker. Nick, which way are you leaning in the co-main event?
I'm actually leaning the Allen side. I do question the drop back down. Like Krause said, he filled out nicely at 155, man. He's a big guy. Now, we've heard some rumors and buzz around this weight cut being a little bit more difficult, or, him having some yeah, of course, right? Yeah. That's pretty obvious, I guess. But, having still a drastic weight cut ahead of him, and, there's pitchers floating around out there. But again, you got to kind of put all the noise aside. I just think Arnold Allen is one of the best featherweights in the world, period. And I think, again, he hits a lot harder people think. Dan Hooker's great offensively, but defensively he is flawed sometimes, and he's very hittable. So I think Allen is going to kind of bust him up as the fight goes on the feet. He can win on the cards. And if there's going to be a finish in this fight, this, again, might be going against the grain. But I think Allen has a better shot to finish Hooker than Hooker does Allen, right? So for me, I do lean Arnold Allen's spot.
So I picked Dan Hooker on my preview show on Monday. However, a couple days later, I saw that Hooker, and I think it was yesterday, maybe in time of recording this, it's Wednesday. So Tuesday, he was 161. That's concerning. I just think, like, I don't know. Like, so I interviewed Hooker before this fight. I actually interviewed like kind of right when it happened. And he was like very adamant about how, look, I've done the research. Things are way different than the last time I went to 45. Like he's really put a lot of time and emphasis, and he's done the test cuts and all that to get to 45. Cause I think a lot of people are like, why would you move down now? Like you're losing to Islam. Like who cares? Like stay at 140, 155. But he was very adamant about how things are going to go well. But again, like when I saw that, I'm kind of like, I don't know. Kind of my thoughts on this. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
Listen, you can interrupt me all you want. It's okay.
I was going to ask when that was.
Which the interview was, or the time or the photo?
161.
I saw a photo. I think it was Tuesday. So today's what, the whatchamacallit? It was the 15th.
I saw that same one. Yep.
So he would have cut sodium on Tuesday, and that 161 will probably turn to 156 in a couple of days, like pretty quick. So I mean,
that's why you're here. Yeah.
Yeah, that he hasn't cut sodium yet. If it was on Tuesday, he hadn't cut sodium yet, and that sodium will drop him down a good 5 pounds probably. And I'm guessing he'll cut 10 pounds of water is what I would have to. If he's 61, I would guess that.
I'm bringing all that up because, I don't rarely do this, but I want to see how Hooker looks at the weigh-ins. I really do. Like, I want to get the eye test. I want to see how he looks. If he looks drained, sucked in, I'm probably going to end up changing my pick, because typically my rule of thumb is when a guy's moving up or down weight classes, I usually favor the fighter that's in the weight class. But in the case of Dan Hooker, I just feel like he's shown a lot of really good, poise, a lot of really good, performances. And, I know some of the wins like James Vick, guys that aren't in the UFC anymore, but you could say the same thing for Allen. Nick Lentz isn't in the UFC. Amir Khani's barely holding on to his job. If he loses this fight, he's gone. He's lost 3 in a row. So to me, it's like, I think they're very close. And the thing with Allen is like, I agree with Nick in the sense that he's very well-rounded, but he hasn't had that type of performance. Maybe it was the last fight against Sodiq, but he hasn't like finished these guys and you're thinking like, oh, this guy's going to be a problem. I haven't had that performance from him yet. I thought the Sodiq win was good, and Sodiq's a very good opponent, as we saw last week, but I haven't seen a performance from him yet that makes me think this guy's going to be a problem. And that's where I think Hooker can take advantage. He'll be a little bit bigger in this one, again, being at, from 55 back down. I know he fought at 45 previously, but he was still big for the weight class back when he fought then. I'm giving a slight edge to Dan Hooker. The one thing I would look at maybe in this fight, and I know Nick likes Arnold Allen by finishing the fight, I could see this fight going the distance. I really could. It's 3 rounds. Hooker's making the cut. I don't know what his chin's going to look like with cutting that extra weight. He might be a little bit more susceptible, but Arnold Allen's not a finisher. We've seen that again against guys that he probably should have finished, like a Gilbert Melendez or someone like that. But that hasn't happened. So I'm going to pick Dan Hooker just because, again, I think he is the better fighter. But kind of like the main event, we're going to learn a lot about both guys once we see this fight take place, especially with Hooker making the drop down. But I want to reserve, the pick right now is going to be Hooker. But if he looks like crap, maybe I'll post something on Twitter. If he looks terrible, I'm going to go Arnold Allen, because that to me is a big factor in this fight.
Yep. That's a big cut, guys. I'm just telling you. Yeah. I was just playing devil's advocate. It's not necessarily, it's not even about the weight. It's not about, I mean, it is obviously, but like Dan Hooker is not a small 55er. Mm-hmm. So for him to go back down to 45, I'm just telling you, there is a point of diminishing turn. And the reality is Hooker is an in-betweener. He's probably a 160er. And that's kind of where I was. I'm telling you guys this because I went through the same thing that I know he's going through for 55 to 70. I should have been at 160. I think he should be at 150. You know what I mean? Like that's where he should be, is 150. I think I just said 160 for him, but 150 is where he should be. But to go to 45 for him is there. I will say this. I can almost guarantee you guys that on Saturday night, when he steps in there to fight, he is not going to be 100%. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he's going to be 91, 92, 99, but it's not going to be 100. And I can almost guarantee that.
But you always bring 100 on the show, James. That's why we have you on here every week. Prop bets. Let's talk about those, guys. Let's get into it. Krause, any prop bets that are catching your eye this week for UFC London?
Yeah, the one that's catching my eye is Gunnar Nelson, Takashi Sato over 1.5 rounds. I think that's sitting right at minus 150 right now. And I'm gonna, like Lynch, you always try to get the plus money, so I'm gonna sneak that in. I'm gonna try to get plus money here too. We could parlay that with either Nathaniel Wood or Ilya Topuria. I know you guys, Jay Herbert's not bad. I don't agree with that, but Topuria is the man. I think he's well-rounded. I think he's the future of the sport in that division. I think the kid's really tough. So if you want to get your plus money, I think parlaying one of those would be a great addition to that. I think it's a good play at minus 152. Gunnar's coming off of 4 years off? His way to finish is going to be by submission, but he doesn't shoot a lot. Sato is pretty good. Both these guys fight really long. They don't get hit clean very often. Sato's takedown defense is pretty good. His only losses are to the elites in the division, which you could count Gunnar in that. But with the time off, I'm just not convinced that Gunnar is where he used to be anymore. So I like this fight to go over 1.5 rounds.
I like that play. I could see that too with the layoff with Nelson, being off for a bit. Maybe he's going to be, he's got to get his feet wet, so to speak, being off that long. By the way, the last fight he had, just want to clarify there, August 2019, when he lost to Gilbert Burns, if you remember, and that sort of led to Burns's, sort of run to the title. So just keep that in mind too. Is there anything you're liking prop-wise, Nick's, on this card as far as any sort of value plays, anything like that?
I think you got to look at the main event total. My suspicion is it doesn't hit the scorecards either way. So 3.5 rounds out there. If you could get under, it's sitting around a pick 'em price. I think you got to lean 3.5 rounds on the under. So I would lean that way because, like I said, I think Aspinall could possibly get Volkov out there. That's what he does best. I know Volkov's a durable guy, but if something's going to give, it's probably in this fight against Aspinall. And the other side of it, like I said, if you get around 3 and 4, I think there's going to be some problems on the other side because Volkov is going to be.
You guys are hating on Aspinall, man.
No,
you guys are hating on.
No. I just think, like I said, if you're talking about a coin flip, I mean, 3.5 rounds basically means that it's going to go into the 4th round, right? So I don't think this fight does go into the 4th round. So I think you got some value if it's a pick'em type of fight on the under.
Okay, I can see that for sure. I don't know. Volkov's been kind of like a decision machine, other than I guess the Overeem and Walt Harris wins. He did take Hardy to a decision, which is kind of interesting because Hardy's been finished, but although that was kind of after the fact. But I could definitely see that. I mean, last week we had Magomed and Santos go the distance, which was interesting. I think people expected to finish there, but you never know. These heavyweights,
there was a lot of close. Last weekend Ankalaev had him hurt. Then of course Santos actually rocked Ankalaev too. So
you guys can't see a situation where these guys just kickbox and spar for 25 minutes. Like that's what I think.
No. I didn't get to sort of say that. I think if Volkov wins, it'll be a decision, to be honest, just because that's typically what we've seen. And I think that Aspinall, it's in London. He's gonna go out on a shield. He's gonna, I don't know. I could just see
the decision. I really do.
I don't think it goes to cards. I really don't. But I wouldn't be shocked if it did. Again, there's just a lot of unknowns on the Aspinall side of things. That's why. So this is the fight. If he does hit the scorecards, then we can see. Part of me wants to see it happen. I don't want to see a boring fight. But if Aspinall is going to be a true contender, I want to see these guys get pushed to the limit, right? So I would like to see this fight go all 5 rounds. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Okay. My prop bet of the week, we talked about the Sato fight. I think Gunnar Nelson by submission right now, pretty good value right now. You can get that at -115. Gunnar Nelson's wins in the UFC, at least recently or over his last couple of fights, have been by submission. He's very good on the ground. And Sato has lost a couple times by submission. In fact, his last fight with Miguel Beza, he was submitted in that fight. So I think if Nelson wins, typically it doesn't go to the scorecards. And I think Nelson does win this fight. I think it was very strategic of him getting Sato, who was a replacement in this fight. And I think, again, Nelson, UK guy, trains, over there. So I could see him winning by submission. And it's -110, which is a pretty good value there too. So I think if Nelson wins, it will be by submission. And again, what I'm basing this off of is the fact that he's won a lot of fights by submission. His opponent has lost a few fights by submission. That's where I'm kind of coming from here. And one other thing I'll mention, level of opposition with Gunnar Nelson. I mean, we're talking about Sato, but look who he's lost to here. Gilbert Burns, Leon Edwards, and the Edwards fight was a split decision. And then he finished Alex Oliveira, and then he lost to Ponzinibbio. These are all really good fighters in that weight class. The only concern, like I said with you guys as well, is the layoff. But let's also not forget Gunnar Nelson's still only 33. So I'm expecting him to go out there, look great in front of the UK crowd and get it done. And I like him by submission there. So that's my prop bet of the week. Okay.
If you guys are really gangster, you'll parlay mine and James's together.
There you go.
I can see this happening. I could see a situation to where Gunnar goes out and strikes for Sato for the first round, and it's a little bit competitive. In the second round, he's like, okay, I'm going to test the takedown, gets a takedown and subs him. I could see that. I could see it going over 1.5 and Gunnar by submission.
Bet of the week. Krause, what do you like in here?
Parlay, Topuria, Nathaniel Wood.
Mm-hmm.
That's sitting at -150-ish, I think. I just think both these guys are hammers. I cannot believe the line on Wood whenever I got it at 250, I think, -250. I think this kid is a hammer, man. I think he's so good. I've warmed up in the back with him. He's a truck, great cardio, hits, good combinations, good takedown defense, good get back up, great boxing. I think he's got it all. I think Nathaniel Wood is amazing, and a lot of people don't know about him yet, and I think that's why we're seeing the undervalue. I think this is going to be smooth sailing for him. I really do. The Topuria side, I think you could see some moments of because Herbert's no joke, but I think if Topuria gets him on the ground and gets a hold of him, there's going to be some real problems for Herbert there. I'm not saying that there's not value on that side, but to me, if you parlay those two together at minus 150, I feel great that both of those are going to hit. I like that a lot.
I think that likely hits. My only concern with Wood is the layoff. October 2020 was the last time he competed. He lost to Casey Kenny in that fight. But when I saw Morales as the replacement, I love Vince. I love the turnaround he's had. I love the fact that he's been a syndicate, and I think he's definitely a better fighter than what we've seen. But yeah, that's the only concern there for me is the layoff. But saying that, I just picked Gunnar Nelson, so what do I know? Wood should cash. And Topuria, my only concern is that he had such a bad weight cut, and that's why his last fight was canceled. And then here he is fighting just a few months later, up a weight class. That's my only concern there, but he should win. I was a big believer in Topuria going into the Evloff fight as well. So, I'm with you there. I looked at that parlay too, to be honest, but I got something else in store. Nick, what are you liking this week for your bet of the week?
I like that. I think James's parlays cashes. I agree with you guys, what you guys just said there as well. The interesting side note is Pimblett versus
Topuria,
Topuria, right? I mean, that's the funny thing. I mean, they had a little bit of side drama there. Of course, if you look online, you can check that out. So that's interesting as well. Hopefully, they're both focused on the opponent in front of them. But it's getting into my bet, my personal bet. Meatball Molly, baby. I love her at this price, even at minus 130, minus 140. I think there's still value. I got her at plus money, believe it or not, because she opened as a dog. And I've been on the Carolina train for a while, man. She's cashed some tickets for me. So it's not like I don't understand how good she is and how difficult of a matchup she is. But I just think in this spot here, McCann's getting better all the time. It's in her backyard. I think she's going to outstrike Carolina. I don't think Carolina is going to be able to utilize that grappling, that grinding style that she has. I don't think she's going to have as much success on the feet, even if she's a little longer. I think this is McCann's fight to win, and I think she's going to shine. So it'll be competitive, but the price, like I said, you can still lay minus 130, minus 140. McCann is the side.
Love that. Yeah, I'm a big Molly McCann fan. Again, she's going to probably get one of the biggest ovations there. If you watched her ever in Cage Warrior, she was there's like a huge ticket seller. Like fans love her and her style, and there's so much sort of going into that as well. Okay, my bet of the week was Volkov. I was going to play that in a sec, but you already know I'm picking him, so it's kind of like, kind of gives it away that I'm already taking him. So I'm actually switching things up at the last minute because something else I thought. I like Corey McKenna over Elise Reed. Elise Reed is just doesn't have that much experience. I know Corey McKenna doesn't either. McKenna's been at Team Alpha Male now for a little bit longer now. She's minus 250. I think there's some value there. I'm not going to play the minus 250 though. You got to get some extra value there. So what I want to do is parlay that with Nathaniel Wood, who I'm also high on, like Krause says. And I think there's some value there because I have a hard time seeing Wood lose. I think they call him the prospect for a reason. I think he's good. So you're not quite getting plus money, but you're getting close to plus money with that. Just want to make sure that actually cashes because, again, with Volkov in the main event, you never know. But again, you're getting him at plus money. So I'm going McKenna, and I'm going against, and I'm also going with Nathaniel Wood. And one other thing I'll mention, Elise Reed, like she just got fed to the wolves in that UFC debut against Sajara. Sajara is a bantamweight. Elise Reed's a strawweight. Like they were fighting at flyweight, and she got destroyed in that one. But even before that, she fought Jasmine Jazavidius, who you guys remember I picked as an underdog a while back. That was a bad decision. She shouldn't have won that fight. So realistically, she's only got a couple fights against decent opposition. I think Corey's much better than her. So that's why I like Corey in that fight. So your thoughts on that?
I like it. I agree with you. And I love that parlay as well. Yeah, I think you cash that one.
I feel like if you guys are wanting plus money out of the parlay, I did this to my own, and I feel like you could do it to Lynch's too. But if you wanted to add Patty Pimblett to that, I feel like that's going to cash too. But
yeah, I'm just a little. My only thing with Patty is like people forget like he got hit pretty good against Vendramini in that. I know he ended up winning, but it was not granted. It's pretty obvious what the UFC is doing here with him. If I'm being candid here, Vargas, like, come on, his second UFC fight, and there was rumors about Jared Gordon and Cerrone. That was never going to happen. I see some people now saying do Topuria and him. He's never fighting Topuria. They're going to build him up like Sean O'Malley, and they're going to continue to give him fights just to build up the brand and everything because he is one of the biggest draws on this card. I don't know with Patty. It's like he's very good,
Vargas
but then he gets hit too.
Hurt him.
No, I'm with you. He'll probably win.
Yeah, Vendramini. Dude, that guy's like a madman.
He could crack. But with Kazula, I don't see it. I think Patty is a terrible matchup for him. Like you said, we see what like we have my friends and I have a saying. It's like, we know what you're doing. I know what you're doing over here. Like we see what you're doing. Like they're trying to build the kid. I get it. I played that separately, and then I did one where I added Patty. I feel like if you want to get the plus money, that's the fight to play on.
So I want to talk about a few more fights because I know people like the extra sort of talk last week. We got a lot of good feedback about that. What are you guys thinking about this Makwan Amirkhani and Mike Grundy fight? Amirkhani, the underdog, plus 160. Grundy, the favorite at minus 190.
I'll go first. I already laid the chalk.
I'll go.
I already laid the chalk on Grundy at minus 135, to be honest with you. Minus 130, maybe, minus 135. And now he's sitting at what? Like minus 190, minus 185, so he's floated up. I just think stylistically, it's a terrible matchup for Americani. Americani is struggling right now. I mean, his best path to victory is his grappling and his grinding style. I don't think this is going to work against Grundy. I think Grundy can out-wrestle him. I think Grundy can outstrike him as well. Americani's best chance to win this fight is landing something crazy on the feet, I think, overall. I know he's got a pretty good submission game, but I just don't think he's going to get in his element. I think Grundy's going to be able to kind of stuff the takedowns and outstrike him. So I think Grundy can win on the cards. I think Grundy could possibly finish. So Grundy's aside, especially, like I said, I got him at minus 130, minus 135. I didn't get him out of this show because the line, again, got away from us. That's why I didn't recommend that. At minus 190, that's a different price, and that's a different bet than minus 130-ish, right? So you got to be a little bit careful, but I do think Grundy wins the fight. And
I saw you nodding your head there, Krause. You're on the Grundy side too, right?
I'm on the Grundy side for sure, and I wouldn't be surprised if he darces him. Grundy's got one of the best darces in the UFC. He's nasty with it. I just stylistically, I think it's a terrible matchup for Americani.
Jack Shore, Tamir Valiev. I think Valiev's the favorite now. That's another really close one. Shore undefeated, but Valiev obviously a lot of experience too. Where are you guys leaning on this one?
I'll go here.
Krause, go ahead.
Valiev by decision is a play that I'm putting in. I just think he's a little bit more active with his wrestling. His pressure is good. His urgency, his sense of urgency, I think, is a little bit there. And the level of competition is quite different than those two. I think Jack Shore is amazing. I think the kid's got a long way to go. I think this is too much too soon, though. And I think Valiev is just a tough matchup for him. I think he's better at what Jack Shore is best at.
I will go opposite here. I will go the Shore side. And you know what? The funny thing is, looking at that plus money as well, when earlier in the week, you could have got a decent price on him. Now the price is gone. That plus money's gone. We've had some sharp action come in on the Shore side as well. I thought that was the case a little bit because, I mean, he's probably getting a little bit disrespected. You know what I mean? He's had some difficult fights as of late. Valiev is a difficult out, of course, because he's got the wrestling like Krause mentioned, and he's got some good striking. So I think he does have the advantages if you look at it on paper and even with the visual looks as far as striking goes. But I think Shore's going to grind him out a little bit. I think Shore's going to be able to adapt. He's a big dude as well. And I think he's going to be able to kind of utilize all of his strengths to get this fight to the scorecards and grind out a decision win. Possibly, man, I tell you what, he gets your back, you're in some serious trouble as well. So I'm not betting this fight, especially now since it's gone. The value's totally gone as well, I think, on the Shore side. But I do think Shore wins this fight. He pulls off an upset win.
Okay, Nikita Krylov, Paul Craig. Krylov the favorite at minus 190. Paul Craig plus 160. Talking about submission, guys. That's where it's interesting.
I don't even know where to start with this one.
I'm saying stay away because honestly, Krylov has been submitted. I know he has submission wins, but you remember he's been submitted by some guys. It's like, where did this come from? I think OSP submitted him. It's just like it's a very, and Paul Craig, to his credit, like he either wins by submission or he loses. Like he submitted Ankalaev, which, like, looking back now, that's crazy.
Dude, the play here. The only play, in my opinion, is Craig by submission. That's the only thing I would play here. And I'm sure you're going to get like plus 200, 300 somewhere in there. Like that's the only play in this. I can't count on these guys they're too inconsistent for me. We had a fight just like this last week. I can't remember which one it was, but it's just inconsistency for me is I got to stay away from it. You know what fight it was? It wasn't this last week. It was Turman versus
Misha Serkinov.
Serkinov.
Right.
Yeah. It's the same thing. These guys, I just need to see a little bit of consistency out of them. The only play for me on this is Paul Craig by submission.
Nick, what are you liking?
Sorry. Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, I don't agree necessarily because I think Krylov is going to win the fight. So, but I think if you're going to play this, that's probably the way to do it. Craig by submission, right? If you're going to play, meaning the dog side of things as well, because I think on the feet, Krylov is so much better. He's improving at a high pace too. I mean, he's getting better. We see his wrestling improving, so his takedown defense should be there, and then I think he's a better striker on the feet. But at the price, again, price is everything. I mean, if we're just doing a coin flip, of course, I'd be all over Krylov, right? But you're laying almost 2-1 now, so I think you got to stay away from him because Craig is dangerous enough, and he's been underrated throughout his UFC career. And if you look at some of the W's he has, man, like Lynch just mentioned, man, it's pretty impressive. So he's no joke, and he could definitely pull off this upset. So for me, it's another fight that I'm staying away from, but I do think Krylov pulls it out.
Also submitted Jamal Hill, which is not an easy task either. Jamal's looked amazing in that way. Yeah, I do have one more just because I do know the guy quite well. Both guys actually quite well. Mohamed Mokaev and Cody Durden. Now, Mokaev's the next coming at flyweight, man. This kid's super young. He's looked great. Pretty good. I think he fought 22 times as an amateur, went undefeated, or at least looked very good overall. Really, really impressive record. But he's taking on Cody Durden. The reason I wanted to bring up this fight is because the line is definitely favoring Mokaev, and I'm picking Mokaev. I think he wins, but I think this is one of those fights where I think Durden's being a little bit underrated here, possibly because of what he said after his last fight, which got him in a lot of trouble, a lot of just dumb comments he said and all that. But I want to warn people about that fight because Durden definitely has some good experience. He has a couple good wins, even on the regional scene. He beat John Sweeney, who's a pretty decent bantamweight prospect at a Wonder Boys gym. That's one that I'm kind of looking at, kind of just getting your thoughts on it. But Durden right now, plus 270, the comeback on Mokaev, minus 350. I imagine both of you guys are going Mokaev, but just curious to your thoughts on that fight.
Same. I'm going there. But I gotta, like, anytime I get a little emotional about it, like, I don't like Cody Durden. So, like, I just don't, I can't bet on it. I can't bet on the fight now because, like, I'm not going to get emotional about it. I shouldn't say I don't like him, but, like, I wasn't appreciative of the comments that he made, obviously. Like, dude, you can't act right, bro. Come on, grow up. So, like, I'm just not going to play it because of that. Like, I'm emotional on it.
Yeah, I think Mokaev definitely has a big upside to him, a ton of potential, but this is going to be a really stern test. So again, it's all about pricing. Would you lay that chalk? I would not. I would stay away from this fight. I think he does get it done, but Durden, I mean, his wrestling, his grinding style is difficult for a lot of people out there. So as this fight progresses, again, I think this is going to be one of the most difficult tests for Mokaev. So I would stay away from it, to be honest with you. Just watch it play out and see how it goes.
And that's the show today, everyone. I really appreciate you tuning in. Sign up for BetDSI. Use the code word UFC. Get the match deposit bonus and the signed James Krause photo. We'll be back here next week. Same time, same channel. For myself, James Krause, Nick Kalikas, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week and enjoy the fights this Saturday.